housing, case management, advocacy, support groups for older adults and their caregivers with Alzheimer's initiatives, transportation, and intergenerational programs.
No, bye. I couldn't hear.
Everything all right?
Yeah.
Are we having technical difficulties?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, so Dr. Torres is a social worker by profession. He also has a PhD from in behavioral psychology with a focus on environmental design for Latinos and Alzheimer's. He's been in the field for 30 years, focusing on areas of mental health, geriatric care, academia, government, and administration. Do we have a treat for you today? He's not only a wonderful person out in the community who's doing so much for older adults and beyond, but he's a personal friend of mine. We've known each other for 30 years, and I'm so happy to welcome here to RSS.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And my apologies. I'm a little bit more informal, and I'm admitting folks into this room. That's the modern, right? The technology. I'm a little old-fashioned. I'm still adjusting. So it's an honor for me to be here. I'm confirming that I'm speaking for 3 hours. So we'll kind of like wrap up at about 10:45, but it's an honor and a privilege for me to be here. You know, this brought back memories. As I was coming in, you had, for those of you, how many of you have been here for a while? Oh, and the light went out. You had an administrator here by the name of Julia, did you not? And that takes me back to when I used to work for Visiting Nurse Service of New York back in the days. And then I ran into Julia later on and so forth. That's why it pays to be kind to people. You never know who you're going to run into again, right? Whatever you feel comfortable with. So Liz is going to ask me a couple of questions and so forth, but let me just go and share with you that, as you all know, you're living through it. We're living through very, very challenging times. Times that, you know, puts into question benefits, access, and services that are available. But in the midst of all of that, we're also dealing with complexity in people's health. The Bronx has continued to see an increase, for example, of individuals with cognitive challenges, the diagnosis of Alzheimer's and related dementia. And so, you know, when you look at that and you look at, you know, what contributes to some of that, you have diet, you have pre-existing conditions. What puts you at risk? Diabetes, hypertension, cardiac disease. And ma'am, your sweater's on the floor. No worries. And so if those conditions are not treated well, it impacts you. And I share with you, anxiety, concerns, and troubles is the reality of what we're facing these days, and it's intensifying. Here I have my mom, for example, 81 years old. 9 months ago, she was officially diagnosed with advanced stage 4 breast cancer with metastasis to the liver. And to top it off, she was also diagnosed with very mild dementia. Thank God I have a sister who's supportive, but it has an impact on the caregivers. How many of you have been caregiving for someone else at one point in your lives? And so how has that felt? How have you dealt with that demand upon you? What's made you able to cope with that situation?
With somebody you care about.
So love, right? Compassion, what you feel for that person, the commitment. What else? Yes.
That person.
Thank you so much. So for those of you that have been on a plane ride, you know, what do they say? In case of an emergency, use the oxygen mask and you first, right? In order for you to be in a position to help someone else. So the self-care is very important. But depending on our upbringing, depending on our philosophy, our perspective, that can turn into a big challenge because oftentimes people say, no, I cannot be selfish, or they interpret self-care as selfish. And that's not the case. In order for you to be in a position to help others, you have to like fine tune yourself. And I'm going to ask you, what are some of the things that you do for self-care that has helped you?
Sleep, if I'm tired, I sleep, because I know that then I get very, I can feel when and I said, I have to lay down. And I learned something else also, that is the vagus nerve here, if you put some ice packs, do you know that trick?
Mm-hmm.
You put the ice pack
Mhm.
here, and that relaxes you. And now in the morning, I take a cold shower. Believe it or not, when they used to say the old-fashioned way, a cold shower, well, that helps me to relax. And I'm not gonna talk with you.
No, but that's wonderful because it works for you, right? The cold shower as an example. For me, I don't touch New York waters because for me, I find them too cold, too traumatizing. Something must have happened in my upbringing that I'm just adverse to anything cold. So I shiver and then I can't even think, I can't even speak. But that's me. As I get older, I'm less tolerant of the cold. God only knows how that's going to look like. But you know, when you look at the coping strategies, I'm thinking of this one person that I have admired. I had the honor and pleasure of meeting the founder of my organization. Her name was Beatrice Castiglia Catullo. And, you know, for me not to mention her would be to disrespect her legacy, especially during Older Americans Month, right? And also Mental Health Awareness Month. So Beatrice Castiglia Catullo was an incredible woman. And think about it, a woman back in the 40s, I'm sorry, in the 60s, in her 40s, trying to start a program. She was a nurse at Westchester Square Hospital. And she had a conversation with God. There was a moment that she says she thought she was going to lose it. And she stopped, her walk to the hospital in Parkchester. And she says, God, if you help me, I will dedicate the rest of my living days to you in service. God answered. And she went to the hospital and there was a patient by the name of Monroe Lovinger. Remember back in the days when ladies used to take their purses and their checkbooks? So Monroe Lovinger said to B, come over here. And this was in the room, the patient room. She says, I'm going to give you a $500 donation to your organization, to your charity. What is the name? And B did not have a name. So she looks out the window. And what do you think is happening outside?
Right.
It's raining. So she says, make it out to rain. And that's how the organization was created. And she started with a bingo gathering, communal gatherings in the community at centers and so forth to try and help individuals that were being discharged with little support or no support into the community. And it was high anxiety, high taxing emotionally as well, as she dealt with the complexities of care management. It has not gotten simpler since then, right? So the organization that I represent is now 61 years old. We turned 61. B joined our Lord on Monday was 7 years of her passing, and she was 101 when she transitioned, and she was a woman of great faith. She passed away, and 7 years ago, it was actually the day before Mother's Day. She was waiting for her son to arrive and visit her from Miami. And she was holding on to that. And as soon as he came, she said what she had to say, and then she transitioned. Until her last moment, that amazing lady had such a vision, such clarity and acuity that was just unmatched. And we gave her the respect and honor of including her. And and people would say two things. B, you have no wrinkles. And she says, because I'm sitting on them. But whenever she was of Catholic faith and she would pray every day, she would do the rosary, and people would say, "What is your secret?" And she says, "I have purpose. I'm engaged in something that I believe in and I'm making an impact." And her self-care was spirituality for her. And it grounded her and it prepared her for the challenges that she faced day in, day out, because life was a little challenging at times. But, and I say that because living with a purpose grounds you. If a person doesn't have a sense of purpose, then the person may feel lost, it may feel void, empty, and all these other feelings, the aches and pains, magnify. And for some people, that becomes a paralysis to your own functioning and existence. So that was a moment of insight for me. We would take these trips to Albany in the car, and she would just talk to me, and I would just take, because people have so much to offer when they live an active life, when they live a life with stewardship and purpose, and combining with, you know, remedies, holistic remedies that, you know, bring about the culture and brings it up alive. As I was coming here, there was a gentleman that drove me here, and I said, "Where are you from?" He says, "Turkey." And he started talking to me about the difference of like even eating, how stressful it is to find the ability to, you know, have a decent meal and so forth. He says, back home, you would walk 2 blocks before reaching someone's land and you could smell the tomatoes. Here, you can't even smell anything. The smell is gone. And he was talking to me about the aroma. He was talking to me about growing up, his childhood, his parents, living off the land, the interaction. What a healthier lifestyle, what a calmer lifestyle. And for him, technology was also stressful, but he is coping and managing. So interesting enough, and the fellow had to have been in his, I want to say mid-50s. He says, "But I'm a happy man now. I waited too long, but I don't think that it was possible for me to have become a father until I went back to my country and I stayed there for a month and I ate better and I ate more organically, because then I was able to, you know, create my son, who's now 2 years old." He says there's something here that's done to the food and all the chemical additives and so forth that makes life, or whatever it is that you're eating, very dysfunctional, chemical reaction to the body. So he's talking to me about how he manages stress, how he manages nutrition, how he manages engagement. And it was wonderful to hear someone even from another part of the world. But stress, anxiety, and so forth, they're same term in different places. It's how we find ways to deal and interact and find solutions. Before Liz asks me some questions, I have to share with you that I've recently, I don't know if you're aware of R.A.I.N, the organization that's based in New York City. You have the Alzheimer's Association, you have R.A.I.N. R.A.I.N also focuses on memory disorders, cognitive disorders like Alzheimer's and related dementia. And we have now embarked in a new initiative called the Blue Zones Diet. So when you get a chance, if the members of the center can be introduced to that, what they did, the Blue Zones, is that they studied communities throughout the world and they looked at the secret behind centenarian living, people that are beyond 100. So they went to Sardinia, they went to Greece, they went to Japan, they went to Costa Rica, they went to a couple of other places, and they interviewed individuals that were living there. How do you manage stress? How do you manage, illnesses and so forth? What do you think were the responses of the individuals in those countries?
Maybe because they keep busy, they find things that are interesting, they volunteer their time. I mean, this is all that I do, so I guess other people do that too.
A sense of purpose. Thank you very much. Any other, huh? Nutrition. What do you think nutrition looks like in other parts of the world?
With less chemicals, so many chemicals all over in food. And even, when you put it in container, plastic container, it's getting through, different kind of thing. Now, before it was very simple, glass or glassy things, and it's saves the food and no chemical when they're growing.
Interesting that this young lady says that the fellow,
It's hard to hear that, the question. No, you don't have to, no, they couldn't hear that.
Oh.
You're fine.
okay.
We're repeating one question.
Whoever, I think somebody asked a question in the audience.
No, I asked a question and then there was a response.
But they wanna hear on Zoom, when I'm talking, they don't hear me.
Right, but you're right, the chemicals and so forth, how, and interesting enough, what I was going to say is that the fellow that drove me here talked exactly what you talked about. Says the plastics, the containers and all that, all the chemicals seeps into the food and so forth, into the soil. Yes, young man.
What kind of country were you asking?
In general,
The third world. The third world people don't eat like we do.
well, I named the countries where the caring zones focus. Greece, right? Sardinia, Japan, Costa Rica, and there's another one that, I know they're in Loma, California, but we're talking about more of the European nations. But what country do you hail from?
Food only. But it's countries that people don't have that kind of.
Right. So what we're trying to do is that we're trying to get into the concept, right, of just basic nutrition. And even in Argentina, because I've been to Argentina a couple of times and I've seen the way the diet and the food is prepared very different from here. So what I'm talking about is if you have knowledge of how other practices, other cultures observe food and nutrition, what
This very there, I'm from Poland. So it was everything very healthy when I was child. But here it's everything is more easy way. It's already prepared. You go and take it, potato chips, soda. We never have a soda in Poland in my childhood. We have orange water and lemonade, like.
So what you're saying is that food isn't more, yes.
A lot of people online also. So when somebody asks a question, can you just summarize what that question was? Because the people online don't know, they only hear your answer, but they don't know what the other person said.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. We'll mitigate that challenge.
Okay. It's today's challenge.
So for folks that are zooming in, nice to virtually meet all of you. And what we're talking about is what other people encounter in other parts of the world where they may be coming from. We just heard someone that is whose origin is from Poland, and that food, there's more organic experiences and less chemicals that are contaminating the food. Thank you. So what R.A.I.N mentioned was that 40% of what they're seeing with memory impairment or cognitive challenges is also in diet, right? So having a diet that's high in sugar and preservatives and processed foods is not good for the body. It's not good for the mind, and it impacts, right? So individuals, as I mentioned to you, with the comorbidities of diabetes, hypertension, cardiac disease, and so forth, puts you at a higher risk of diseases that may impact the memory and the cognition. So what we're doing is that we're adopting the philosophy of healthy eating, right? What does healthy eating look like? What are your options? What are your choices? How many of you eat tofu? How many of you eat processed foods? How many of you eat, candy and sweets and so forth? And all that, when you combine the non-healthy eating practices, has an impact on the body, which also has an impact on your emotions, on your mental health. There are some foods that make you feel completely drained, you know, and so forth. If you're dealing with other affective disorders like the depression, the anxiety, and so forth, depending on the food intake that you select and your current situation with your medical, it may have a contraindication. Liz,
Question, Dr. Torres. So it's all very good information that we're hearing, but in a practical.
you want to get
sense,
closer so that.
How,
Mhm.
any suggestions on how to switch into a more healthier lifestyle in terms of nutrition? Like what can older adults do? Because of course, that also is tied into the financial piece of the person's life. So any idea how older adults can become creative to find ways to be able to switch to more of an organic diet? Because you know, organic is more expensive. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, yeah.
How everything that's healthier for you is more expensive. Let's get them all excited, okay?
So Liz is asking what are some of the strategies that one can use in order to eat a little bit more healthier? You may have individuals who will refuse to change their food staple. For example, rice, white rice, right? So when you look at individuals that may not be interested in switching their food, we can then maybe negotiate on the amount or the size of. So I tell people, look at the palm of your hand. And based on that palm of your hand, that should be your portion for the rice. Instead of having two portions of your palm, right, for rice, have two portions of your palm for vegetables. And you reduce that food group that may have a more impact on you on diabetes. And I share with you, I'm diabetic type 2, right? As of now, 9 years ago, it's more hereditary. My father turned diabetic at 50. So I'm following in that step. And I already know it's proven, and I have a little sensor on me that alarms. So if it goes up, you hear an alarm, that's something happening. If I eat pasta, no joke, my sugar will go from 106 to easy 279. Okay. If I have ice cream, which I love, right? My Swiss vanilla almond. If I eat my ice cream, I will see it, shoot to 300. If I eat cereal, even with almond milk unsweetened, nothing else, I see it shoot up. So I'm learning more about my reaction, my individual reaction, right, in a response. So what I have to do, I have to look at portion control. I have to learn how to substitute. And here I am, been in the field, right? But it poses a challenge. And guess what that does to my emotions? If I am around people, if I'm around my family and they're eating pork, they're eating rice, they're eating plantains, they're eating this, they're eating that, I'm like, how do I not feel left out? You know, it becomes a lonely experience for the person that's going through that process. And if the family is not sensitive or the support group around you is not sensitive, so, oh, you can have more, you can have more. It's like the temptation. Oh my God, what do I do? No, no, yes, eat it. You know, it's only one time. You have to start making choices. Being in programs like this, coming and so forth, and being part of a communal experience, which is also one of the secret successes of these other countries, what they have found is living in community and support makes a world of a difference because you're not on that journey alone. Less processed food, eating more organic, eating more that from the land that's not contaminated has been found helpful. Interesting enough, the group from Japan talked about a philosophy, and the philosophy is eat only until you fill your belly 80%, not 100%. Don't eat until you're full. Eat just right to not be hungry. And that does, these different strategies that others are implementing are key. Drinking and consuming more water, looking at, less soda and so forth. How many of you are taking medications where you see, don't take on an empty stomach? it's also not good to starve yourself. You know, unless you're going through a religious practice and you've cleared it with your physician where you may need to fast and so forth, you know, there are exceptions to be made. Example, during Holy Week, my priest says, well, one of the things you could do is that you could fast for the day. I said, Doc, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my priest, father, I can't do that because I'm diabetic. And that will also raise my sugar when I don't have something that's metabolizing in my system. He says, no worries. There are exceptions to everything. But it's important to engage in that dialogue with those around you.
So it sounds like to me that, you're talking about the life course and people's lives. There's certain individuals in their life and their space that have an impact on their mental health, on their physical health with the messaging that they're receiving, right? Or feeling that peer pressure of, I have to join in, right?
And Liz, thank you for saying that. You hit it on the mark. What this philosophy within the Caring Kind Blue Zones initiative is that you have to be careful who you choose to hang out with. If you have, and you remember this, for those of you that have children and so forth, you know, as they were growing up, be careful who you hang out with, and you would watch, you know, the company that they kept. You have individuals that may be toxic in the sense that they will not champion or support your focus of eating and living better. So what the communities around the world are doing is that they're emphasizing and amplifying the importance of socializing with like-minded individuals, those that want to have a healthier lifestyle, those that want to have a better impact, those that feel a sense of purpose in their community does wonders for their emotional state and their physical state.
I was once at a fair over at Jacoby Hospital, and they had desserts and stuff, and I said, don't you have anything that's sugar-free because I'm diabetic? And they said no, and I stood out in the hallway, and I was stunned by that. And the doctor passes by and he says to me, what's the matter? I said, they don't have anything that's sugar-free. And he went right over to them and said, you are wrong, definitely wrong. You have to have sugar-free stuff. This is a hospital facility.
So one of the members talked about her experience having attended an event, a health fair, where they didn't have more nutritious options, where it was just sugar. And you will have situations like that. And it's interesting. On my way here, I like last night, I was at an event and they were presenting these dishes. And I'm like, I don't know how my mind jumped into it's not in my zip code. For me, I had to cope with it. So I'm like, this food group or this candy or this sweet, this not in my zip code. I cannot even entertain that because then I'm going to pay the consequences. And not to say we're not perfect and it's okay not to be perfect because there's no such thing as perfection except being imperfect.
You know what? If somebody doesn't have diabetes or they don't have cancer and the other person does, they're not so much in tune with them because they don't have it.
Right. So you have individuals that don't have medical or pre-existing conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, obesity, cardiac disease, and so forth. But being healthy is just a good overall impact.
This is a good segue since it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Dr. Torres, so I've been here a year at RSS as the Director of Clinical Services, and I'm supposed to help build behavioral health services here at the center and beyond out in the community. So could you talk a little bit about the importance of counseling, the stigma of mental health? You know, I have older adults that are talking to me individually or they're attending one of our groups here, which is very beneficial for that peer support. But I really want to help, bring the message home that the mind and body are together, and the benefits of sitting with someone and receiving counseling so they can get to the goals that they want to reach. Sometimes we can't do it alone. We need a little bit of help. So can you touch on that?
I can. Liz talked about the stigma of mental health and the importance of mind, body, and spirit, and the unification of those three concepts. And that at the end of the day, you have a resource that you don't, they have to pay for this
No,
and it's free.
the city,
Okay,
Department of Health, and if you don't utilize the counseling or provide the service and you don't show whoever's funding us, they're gonna give it to somebody else. So there's always that urgency to make sure.
so the importance of utilizing resources. First of all, I want to say that it's okay not to be okay. I have a colleague, we have a colleague who launched a mental health program in Queens, and he's represents Venezuela and Colombia. And he says that there's so much stigma in the community, depending on the group that you're coming from. There may be some cultures that may be more apt or open to discussing things and seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist and so forth. And there are many other cultures that say, no, you're crazy, don't do that. And you reflect on the values that were part of your household, part of your upbringing. And I'm not going to ask anyone to self-disclose, but I can imagine that there are individuals here in the group whose family or household were not used to vocalizing things outside their immediate household, that everything was kept inside, that it was not cool to verbalize and talk.
Air out your.
Right. And that's why I say it's okay not to be okay. We're human. We're impacted. Some of us are impacted just by turning on the TV on a daily basis. Some of us are impacted by walking outside. Yeah, the other day I went before a town hall meeting and there was a fellow that took his walker and said, I need to say something. He's 80 years old. He says, the death of me is going to be my mouth because I speak my opinion. But it's traumatizing for me to walk out and have to dodge scooters in the streets. It's not safe. Someone's going to die and so forth. And that really promoted a high level of anxiety and so forth. So we had a discussion right after, but the fact that you have a forum or a place where you could discuss your innermost thoughts and concerns or not, or even chat. I tell people, think of it as a wellness chat. You don't have to think of it as a patient and doctor dynamic. It's, what do I need to get off my chest today? Because I'm human. You're like sponges. You absorb a lot in society, in your community, in your household. Someone in this room, you may not know right now, may be going hungry. Someone in this room may be mourning. Someone in this room may be living with a trauma or discomfort that they've been carrying for all their lives. Recently, at one of the centers, a coach, a life coach, came and spoke, and she spoke about how she was brutally raped at 7. And at the end of the discussion, an 87-year-old lady came up to her and hugged her and was crying, and she says, I feel a connection to you. And I share with you that I too was a victim of violence and of that nature when I was 8, and my children don't even know it. So look at all those years that this person has been carrying with something, and this is the first time she disclosed. And visualizing her or remembering her prior to her disclosing that, and then after, she looked lighter. She was able to breathe and so forth. And that's why it's so important never to knock down anyone for wanting to speak with someone and share an innermost thought or experience.
Dr. Torres, I'll just tell you, avoidance is a coping mechanism. And in today's environment, with all the information every day we're hearing from, the news outlet, the phones, don't you love these phones? I'm being sarcastic. You have access to all this information, constantly, what's happening in the world, what the president is doing. But I feel that one of the strategies is limiting your time on social media, looking at your phone, reading the news. I don't even look at the news. I already told my family, if something really important happens, call me and tell me, but I don't look at the news. because that's how I maintain my mental health. So I think it's important to, talk a little bit about that, like what strategies you can do to survive in this time, because it's a lot of stress and a lot of information.
So Liz is talking about our obsession or the increased use or reliance on technology. Like with everything, right? There are phenomenal benefits to technology, but sometimes it borders on extreme. And I'll give you an example. From the beginning, I told my son, when we have a meal, no phone. So now he's 27, going on 28, and he thinks he's my father. And, just recently we were out dining and he goes, so I look at my wife and I have this, that parent look. And then I say to him ever so gently, because you have to be careful how you speak to this younger generation as well. Puppy. No phone. It's our time. Because people need to really enjoy community and that human connection. You can't live in a world where you're feeling void or perpetuating that, because it's going to make you feel more empty. And that also brings about other emotional reactions such as depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and so forth. Yes.
I heard that in my church, the men's ministry went out to dinner. And the person that was facilitating it, he says, first man who picks up his phone, you better pay for all these gentlemen that are sitting here. And it was so funny. Of course I wasn't there. It's men's ministry, but they tried to hold their hands down. That it was so tempting to talk on the phone.
So a humorous reference was made where there was a congregation gathered for dinner, and one gentleman said, if anyone that picks up the phone will have to pay for everybody's meal. That's enough to deter anyone. Someone's raising their hand. Thank you, Liz.
Yes. Are you able to hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you, but
Yes, I'm on the phone. Thank you. Thank you so much for what you're bringing to us. I just want to share. My name is Barbara. I call in on the phone.
hi,
I don't
Barbara.
use technology. Hi. I was born and raised in the Bronx and lived there until I was 21 years old, and then moved to Queens. And during that time, we had what I would call a collective spirit. People went on each other's fire escapes and hung out up there, and we opened the fire hydrants to go swimming or went to Orchard Beach. There was a real sense of community, of belonging. And my father, who was drafted into World War II and shot twice, when he came home, they were told, a real man doesn't cry. Don't talk about it. Just move on. So I'm kind of just responding to some of the things you're saying about messages that people are given and how that affects them. But I know this much, that in Italy, men meet every day for lunch. A lot of men, and they meet in the same place, and they eat together, and they talk about things and feelings, and they eat homegrown vegetables that they grow in their gardens, and they share, and they say that they live longer than people do in other countries, particularly America. From what you were saying in a different way, I think the same meaning was that being with like-minded people who want to be healthy, belonging and connecting, and knowing every day you have this place and these people that you're going to be with, and that you all have the same goals, is so valuable. And growing up in the Bronx, we had that then. When I'm talking about, I grew up in 1944, a long time ago. I don't have it in Queens. It's not out here. It doesn't exist. I don't know if it still exists in the Bronx or different parts of the Bronx from where I grew up, but I wish that there was more of that again. And I happen to love Richie Torres, and I think that he's someone that's going to change the world in many ways. And and even in some of the ways that we're talking about in here, and how he respects and honors and cares for people and the things that he does and says. So I just wanted to share that, and thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that insight, and it validates the discussion and the key points that we are touching upon. Interesting enough, when they analyzed and they looked at, I'll now get to this young lady in a moment, communities, they found that in Greece, there was the largest gathering or group of men were located in Greece beyond 100. But what they found was that they lived healthier even shortly after 100. And then when it was their moment to join our Lord, they went quickly. They didn't have prolonged chronic suffering. And it was in large part due to the nutrition, but also to the communal type of setup and living style. Yes.
You know, over here in the center, we had 3 ladies, 4, and when you sit in the table, the first thing that we know, we don't use the phone. If somebody coming one day, they sit next to us, you know, we look at them because they open the phone right away. But we are a group of 4, nobody uses the phone or showing pictures of my grandchild. Nobody wanna see it in that moment when you're eating, right? So
the comment was made regarding 3 ladies here at the center who, when they do gather and they sit, they do not use the phone. My recommendation or my thought is to this, or reaction, aside from a comment that you made that made me think of the conclave, do not replace human connection with your phone and technology. This does not replace this organic experience that we're having right now, where I'm seeing people, whether it be here or virtually I see Yvonne and I see Margaret and a couple of other folks. That doesn't substitute, right? So let's not get lost in the technology. Technology is good, but let's not replace with the human connection. Yes.
Keep you on time. So you want to, for the last couple of minutes, open up to any questions from the audience?
Sure. Anyone who has not spoken would like to share something, ask anything? Margaret McCarthy? Calling Margaret McCarthy. Look at that smile. There you go. Make it happen. Alma. Okay, Alma saved you, Margaret. Go ahead, Alma. How do we unmute?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Alma.
Okay, I agree with everything you say. It's just it's not seniors. You have to tell the senior. I think it's already children and junior high and especially high school kids. They're using the phone 24/7, and people forgot how to write letters. People forgot how to socialize, and that's a real problem for the future of our next generation. But I also want to tell you that when you talk about nutrition and how it affects us, wouldn't it be nice if they already would teach that in elementary school? And also that the parents could come in and learn. I mean, of course, you know it's McDonald's. McDonald's should be with veggies also. You know, that would be great. Nobody would want to go. But if they would make the vegetables look interesting, then maybe more people would, you know, I make a salad every day. I'm not saying I'm super healthy, but my husband always wanted a salad. And I continued that even after he left us. We still make a salad in addition to whatever else I'm serving. But yes, nutrition is so important. They should really be part of the elementary school curriculum. Thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you, Alma. When you said that, I thought, how do we bring sexiness into the nutrition discussion? How do we make it sexy? How do we make a broccoli look sexy? Or
Right.
Or a tomato? Yes.
To come here, and I just wanted to thank you and let you know to some of that you made me feel so good.
Thank you. And what is your name? Toby. Thank you, Toby, for sharing that. I'm honored and I'm humbled by your feeling. I'm glad that you skipped your class. I'm a bad influencer.
Can I make a comment? Are you taking any calls from the audience?
Yes.
Oh,
My name is Sarela Martinez, and I'm an author and a past restaurateur and scholar, I guess, in the Mexican ways of living. And traditionally, the Mexican diet is very, very healthy. And one of the things that happened is that when in our bodies, but they're not that plentiful. So people, the bodies got used to assimilating the healthy food. When they come to the United States or even in the border towns of Mexico, people start eating a lot of sugar and everything, and their bodies are so efficient that they gain all this weight. And there's just no way of controlling it, because if you go to Mexico, people are not fat. It's just or unhealthy particularly. But I give a lot of classes on how to eat healthily, which is very simple as long as you can do it fast and get the ingredients there, and you like flavors, because I think that what happens is that it's very hard to enjoy food if you don't have the flavor. You've got to have flavors that are thrilling or at least satisfying or comforting, because fast food uses a lot of fat to stimulate the flavors of the fat. All the flavors go around your mouth. But as far as getting ingredients, people should sign up for those boxes of leftover vegetables that are not perfect, and that they will deliver them to your house, to your apartment, and you can make all sorts of delicious vegetable things that are not necessarily vegetarian but I reiterate that flavor is so important to make people eat healthfully.
Thank you for those words, Sarela. I mean, you made me hungry. I already started thinking about my mole and guacamole without the chips. But Liz is going to organize a cook-off, representing different dishes of the world and presenting the healthiest part of those dishes for healthy living. Thank you, Liz. Invite me, please. Thank you.
Something about taste and, making the connection with lifestyle choices. When you smoke for a long period of time or drink, the taste buds in your tongue are wiped out. So keep it in mind. These are the little things that we have to, talk about so people can understand that the choices you make have consequences in the long run. And then sometimes when you want to enjoy a meal, you're going to have difficulty enjoying the meal because your taste buds are no longer what they used to be.
Well, I don't know. I think Carol's inviting us over. Go ahead, Carol. Over to you.
Yes, on the food side, I'm very thrilled that I have cut out ice cream. And when I pass the aisle, I'll often stop and say, don't go down, don't go down. But keeping the foods we're not supposed to eat out of the house is important and difficult for me.
Carol, I think you're an expert with
no.
managing temptations.
Yeah, but the more important thing in terms of our coping with this change as our bodies change, our health change, is I find making my family aware, not that I have the condition, but yes, it affects them. They're scared to see this change. They're aware of it. How to help them to cope with what I'm coping with is what I find is difficult. The other thing people have told me, a couple of my family, when their husbands retired, they don't have the network, or they don't have the start of the network that they had when working. They were, in our day, more competitive. They were so concerned about advancement, or not being not sharing their thoughts, feelings with their coworkers, that it might affect them in work. Like in the old days, I would have been horrible to have my health record so available as it is now, because Big Brother has it. They need to be outreach for them to learn how to do things like our community centers. But
And thank
all of
you,
this
Carol.
is helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you for that insight. Liz, could you get a men's group going and see how we can, look at that socialization piece?
That's on the to-do list, yes, Don.
Thank you. Thank you for the resurrection. With that said, the time is already here. I have to thank you. Thank you so much for just paying attention, being here and sharing in community, both in present, right? And also virtually. God bless all of you. May you have a phenomenal day and may you not be tempted as much. And select foods and just an attitude that's all about wellness, empowerment, hope, passion, and goodness. God bless you.
Thank you so much for including us on Zoom.
Thank you so much. Now I'm off to
I know.
the city and take us.
Where you going?
Gramercy Park, Gramercy?
You're gonna get there on time?
Yeah. This is, I can only hope and wish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Do you have a sticker or anything? You're got car parking?
No, I'm good.
No, I feel good.
Thank
Is it okay if we post that online?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate it. Take care. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Listen, that's fine too.
I wanted to sing to them, but I had nice. I recorded something that I heard you, Jenny. You know how to do it. Yes, you got it. And then just go to RSS. Yeah, and then when you find our page, it'll be on. I think, and then I can see. Yeah. No, it's here next.
Yeah, but I have to go home because I have to go to the dentist. But, you know, but
Yes, pull out your phone and pull up YouTube. And then we'll get that. Okay. You know, I was saying, so to say,
I like to come here, but I have to go to.
oh, like, yeah, that was a.
What was, snake thing? What?
I was, but I have it also.
On my iPhone.
So I have, and go ahead.
Can I take this off? Oh.
You want me to be?